Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning and Development Council of the Town of Oakville. Madam Clerk, do we have regrets for this evening?
Yes, we have regrets from Councillor Khan, Councillor Robinson, and Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest, Council? Thank you. Would you like to resolve into Committee of the Whole? Councillor Lapworth and Councillor Grant move and second we resolve into Committee of the Whole. All in favor? Opposed? We are resolved into Committee of the Whole. We have no consent items on the agenda tonight, and there are no public hearing items listed for this agenda, but we do have 3 discussion items and the advisory committee minutes of Heritage Oakville. And Council, the first report before you for discussion is the Palermo Heritage Conservation District review that we requested of staff of an earlier decision. How do you wish to proceed? Councillor Elger.
Unless someone wants the presentation, I'd be willing to move the staff report that it be received.
Thank you.
Unless there's delegations that would like to speak.
Are there any members of the public with information for Council on this file? Are there any member of Council with discussion? All in favor? Opposed? The recommendation carries. The next item before us is the report, the notice of intention to demolish at 63 Washington Avenue, and the recommendation from Heritage Planning staff is that the report be received. How do you wish to proceed with this one, Council? Councillor Duddick.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll move it.
Are there any members of the public with information for Council on this item? All in favor? Any discussion? All in favor of Councillor Duddick's motion to receive? That carries. That brings us to item number 3, the notice of intention to demolish at 332 to 336 Robinson Street. And I know we have a delegation who wants to speak. Madam Clerk, would you call the delegation?
Joseph Sarnecki is here to speak on behalf of the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association.
Welcome, Mr. Sarnecki. Council looks forward to your information.
Thank you, Mayor Burton, councilors. I'm here on behalf of the Oakville Lakeside Residents Association to provide some comment on the request for a demolition permit. We are not here to oppose, first of all, the issuance of a permit should one be deemed to be issued. But we would like to see some considerations to the extent that they can be made around the issuance of this permit. The property that's discussed here is adjacent to the Old Oakville Heritage Area. The property has been considered for heritage designation, so there is some heritage value there. What we want to ensure, though, is that on a going forward basis, that should Council decide to approve for a demolition permit to be issued, that we try and preserve somewhat the property that's there today. We've had a situation recently with a number of properties in and adjacent to the Old Oakville Heritage Area where permits have been issued, and we feel that there needs to be some process adjustments because at this point in time, we're losing a lot of our tree umbrella, canopy rather, and we're really getting concerned about the types of buildings that are being put into these particular areas. I've been led or informed, I guess, that conditions cannot be applied to a demolition permit. So what we would request is that to the extent possible, Council directs staff that in looking at a request for a demolition permit, that attempts be made to preserve, first of all, the number of trees that are located on the property at this time, as opposed to simply issuing a permit and then after the fact saying, oh, now how do we preserve the trees? Because in fact, what will probably happen is what's happened in the other properties in our area, where the demolition starts, the tree roots become exposed, they become a liability, and the heritage staff here at the town have to agree that the tree must come down so there's no liability to the developers and they get to remove all the trees, which isn't what we want to see going forward. We would also want to make sure, to the extent that it can be done, is that direction be made so that any permits to redevelop this site after a demolition permit has been issued, to the extent that we can enforce the existing bylaws. We're currently, I'll say, under siege, basically, along the south side of Robinson. We have a number of properties currently that are before the OMB, and we're trying to settle those out. This one, again, is in the buffer area between the Central Business District and the old Oakville Heritage area. And again, you know, we need to make sure that the developers get the message early that they just can't come in here once they've got a demolition permit in hand. And our concern is that if a demolition permit were issued without any conditions, the developer can come and say, so if there wasn't any interest when you issued the demolition permit, what's everybody upset about now when I come with my permit to build a building on this site? So we need to ensure that, that this be taken into account, and that the buildings that are built in the future on this potential location be complementary and actually act as a transition between the Central Business District and the Old Oakville Heritage area. So again, from our point of view, we're not here to oppose the issuance of a permit should council decide to go in that direction, and I understand it's going to be conditional based on whether the property becomes designated heritage or not. It is outside the heritage area, but it is also in the buffer, which is adjacent to, directly adjacent to the heritage area. So I think from our point of view, I think awareness at this point in time, and then hopefully direction going forward to improve the processes and see what can be done so that we can circumvent this in the future of people trying to get around the processes here of trying to get a permit early and then simply having the property sold to a developer with a demolition permit in hand, and we have a problem on our hands after the fact.
Thank you very much for your information. Are there questions for the delegation? Councillor Elgar?
I don't have questions of the delegation. I have questions of staff, if they can answer any of those questions of what we can do going forward, because exactly what he is saying is happening. And I mean, what can we do going forward?
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarnicki.
Mayor, members of council, through a demolition permit under the building code, there is no ability to actually require conditions. I think what Mr. Sarnicki is probably referring to is the site alteration permit process, where we do have some ability to evaluate trees. We can, through that process, look at minimizing the number of trees that come down in order to just facilitate the demolition. We couldn't prevent a demolition permit if it were to result in the removal of trees, but we can minimize the impact. So I think that's the opportunity we have to do that. And I would agree with council. There is, I think, some issues that we need to look at relative to the tree bylaw, the site alteration, and the various processes and mechanisms we have in place to ensure we're providing the maximum protection to the trees as we can, while still having regard for the statutory requirements that the legislation sets out. So the tree bylaw, I think, has been in place for about 2 years now. We have seen some areas that we need to look at and to review, and so staff is undertaking that review at this point in time.
Thank you, Commissioner Closey. Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Council, how do you wish to deal with the report? Councillor Elgar? Councillor Elgar moves receipt.
Yeah.
In discussion, all in favor? Receipt is approved. There are no confidential discussion items, and that brings us to the advisory committee minutes for Heritage Oakville. How do you wish to proceed, Council? Councillor Duddick? Councillor Duddick moves approval of, or rather receipt of the minutes. All in favor? Opposed? They are received. A motion to rise and report to council would be in order. Councillor Knoll, all in favor? I think that carries. Thank you. I rise and report that council has met in committee of the whole and has made recommendations on discussion items 1, 2, and 3 and advisory committee minutes, item 4, as noted by the clerk. A mover and seconder for this report, Councillor Johnston, Councillor Duddick, all in favor? Opposed? The report is adopted. Is there any new business of an emergency, congratulatory, or condolence nature? Thank you. We then, it's in order to have a motion and a second for the consideration and reading of the bylaws. Councillor Adams, Councillor Knoll. Pardon? Certainly.
Thank you, Your Worship. Bylaw 2011-001 is not accompanied by a staff report. I'm just curious if staff could fill me in on what exactly this is. It's probably the conversion of private roads to public right-of-way, but I just wanted to understand exactly what it is, because there's no maps or descriptions going along with it, and it's been an ongoing case on my files for 10 years, so I wonder if this is a closure to that.
Solicitor, we turn to you.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. This is a bylaw which deals with some of the one-foot reserves and minor matters of that, and it just incorporates those elements into the public roadway. We had brought a report, I believe it was last August, authorizing us to bring forward these kind of bylaws without reports because they are truly minor. And this is one of those bylaws. I know we're looking at that system a little more, but it is one of those matters.
Thank you, Worship. I have no issue with it. I just thought it was the conclusion to another issue that had been ongoing for a while, and I hadn't seen reports, so I was kind of curious. So thank you very much for the indulgence.
Oh, you're welcome. All progress is welcome here, I'm sure. All right, I'll call the vote on the motion for the consideration and reading of the bylaws. All in favor? Thank you. That carries. That ends the items on the agenda. Thank you for your time and attention. We are adjourned.